Today's episode is presented by Lodestar, the fee experts.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Lending Leaders. My name's Alayna Gardner, AMP, and this week I'm joined by Wes Horbatuck from Dark Matter Technologies, where he's the VP of Marketing. And I'm always excited to get another marketing professional on the show because I really feel like we can dive a little deep and have some fun with that. So thank you, Wes, for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. I agree.
So our first question is always kind of tell us a little bit about your journey into mortgage and how you ended up here.
Yeah. Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it. I love having time to speak to another mortgage professional, especially in marketing as well. So my journey is pretty interesting. I'm from Avon, Connecticut, and in high school doing my family is somewhat in the mortgage industry. I started working in the mortgage world. And I got into mortgage by laying bricks at a walkway at a mortgage lender location. So I literally was helping them do some stuff outside and then got into learning more about mortgage stuff with the family. And then after school, I ended up working for a lender. And my first step into the technology world within mortgage lending specifically was I was physically copying and photocopying rate locks in the secondary department and realized how backwards and outdated that was and wanted to change a lot. That was my first step into the mortgage.
So I'm sure someone has made this terrible joke before, but I would be doing my co-host a shame if I didn't. But so you laid the bricks for your mortgage career.
Laid the bricks, laid the foundations. You got it.
Laid the foundation. Our CEO, Jim, would be very disappointed if I left that one hanging. So I had to come back for it. And so one thing we always do on the show is we do a little bit of LinkedIn research here. You've described your mission as making mortgage technology exciting while you navigate AI, origination, and all the other things that come into that. How do you do that in your day-to-day?
So I feel like I have a pretty good finger on the pulse in what's going on outside of mortgage. I think one of my biggest pet peeves is that we go home and have such access to AI and technology and with our devices. And then a lot of time in mortgage, we almost forget that it exists. And I really want to make sure that I bridge the gap between those two things and make sure that there is a realization that you can really take what you know from the world, what you do in your personal life, what you do in your social setting with your friends or family, and then being able to translate the needs of technology outside of work and making sure it's relatable and approachable at work. So I just like to reference a lot of my personal experiences and how I like to interact with technology and what I don't like to interact with technology, and then try and push that into technology that Dark Matter specifically uses and pushes on.
Yeah. So you've been in marketing for quite a while. And we know one of the things that's hard to measure sometimes with marketing is how all of the individual pieces actually affect the sales origination team or ops team on our side, right, from the tech side. How do you think, what opportunities are lenders and partners potentially missing in the conversion point, right, from marketing to sales?
I think there's a lot of really good technology these days and making sure that you understand the entirety of your flow. I think that's for, at least I'm going to speak specifics on my team, right? And I'm not going to have anyone on my team from the sales department. Feel like understanding that it's not just segmented by your specific role and that you have, there is an entire process from top of funnel from marketing perspective, understanding touch points with leads, understanding how those leads interact with your site, your marketing, your conferences, everything, how those leads fall into the funnel from marketing leads to sales qualified leads. And then once marketing passes that off, keeping tracking on your leads and on your conversion into, nurturing those leads in the sales process. And I feel like the sales people and marketing people never sometimes see that, but it's part of the same process. It's just a little segmented. So from my side, I'm really honing in on CRM clean data. This like making sure that people know that there's accurate handoffs and that the marketing team will help to nurture email and nurture campaigns of existing prospects. That it's not just sales doing their job themselves. Like we are also helping with touch points to make sure we nurture prospects and clients the correct way because of the reporting CRM.
Yeah. I think a lot of organizations segment sales and marketing because it's kind of what we've always done. And I think it's from kind of this more historical viewpoint of marketing, right? Of ad campaigns and this and that with printed media. But now with technology, there's so much that marketing can add throughout the sales cycle that they almost have to be more intertwined. It's something that I've actually been working on doing within my own organization. It's the reason I've kind of said, like, I don't want to give up control of both departments as we scale is because I think
Totally.
having a single kind of lead and a single driving point, right, can be really important. So I think it's something that we have to remember is that sales and marketing has actually changed quite dramatically in the last 10 years, right? Data is now like, as marketers, our job is data.
Yeah.
It's no longer
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's fun ad campaigns, but it's data.
Yeah. I have someone on my team that's specifically digital like data. And she's so good at it, but it's like, you don't have, if you're not using the tools given to you to like really analyze your data, then like you're not doing your job, to your point.
Yeah. And our job as marketers is to kind of create content that people want to consume. And I think we have to have our finger on the pulse so much of what's coming, right? What are things people starting to talk about now that we need to care about that we know is going to be a bigger issue in 6 months? For you, what's the most exciting thing that you're starting to see people talk about that you're excited to start marketing about? And what's the thing you think people might miss that's actually fun and unique and an interesting topic?
I think that this is always like an interesting time of year because people come off of summer and they're like, they like switch from summer mode to like work mode. Like, oh, we have to close deals before the winter because that's
Yes.
the end of the year. And so as marketing, I'm trying to think 6 months ahead and be like, okay, like how can we bridge conference season to end of year planning to let's look ahead next year. Those are all based on stuff that we do every year on stuff. But from an exciting standpoint, I think there's some threads to be pulled on from like what's going on with the real estate market and like that new rule, who's getting compensation.
Yeah, with the NAR
Real
settlement.
estate
Yep.
agents. I think there's some really cool data that will tie like the real estate world to mortgage from the perspective. The other thing that I like to pull on right now is just like the rise of really good loan originators. So I heard a really good quote recently that talked about how first-time home buyers are very aligned with loan originators their same age, and that people who are first-time home buyers are more likely to work with someone who is understanding. So like an LO that is maybe 65 may not understand the way that a 35-year-old thinks in terms of their. That's not either person's fault, but I do think that there is going to be a rise of like loan originators that are younger who are really understanding like newer technology and how first that are going to start doing it. And I think that's a really interesting way to, I don't know, thread origination marketing person. I feel like how can we go after both legacy thinkers in the mortgage world, but also like those first time LOs that are starting to gain a lot of traction because their friends are getting their first houses. Like, how can we market to those folks? So like, that's a thread on them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, if you look at NFM, right? Like Greg Schur and his team, they've got an influencer division.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
They have this huge team of just influencers. And I think the thing that, Jordan and some of those other folks, we had Jordan on the podcast last season, that they've done so well is just they do the skits, right? Like they actually show what the home buying experience looks like to borrowers and see the reactions that happen on the other side of the phone when potentially you buy a car in the middle of the mortgage process, right? They see what the actual impact of some of those bad financial decisions is because they're being shown them in real time and kind of this real life experience in the way that they want to be communicated to, right?
You got it.
So I completely agree with that. And before we give you our fun Lodestar question, one thing that we found is, so apparently you're a very avid runner. What has running kind of taught you about weathering downturns in the market? It's a very endurance-driven sport.
Great question. And good research there. But so I actually just completed a triathlon this past weekend, and one of the things that I've kind of learned is that, especially with triathlons, you can't listen to music when you're competing because they don't allow that. So it allows you a lot of time to think. And one of the things is like pushing too hard is almost a negative effect, even though it makes you go faster. And I like to make sure, like from my side and my team and learning about these things, I like to operate at 80%, knowing that you can push it hard if you need to cross the finish line. But I feel like sometimes, like, bandwidth allows for positive creative thinking in that space because, like, you're operating successfully. So, like, and you're going pretty close to your max speed. But at that same time, like, you're in a clear state of mind where you can think and have conversations without overburdening. And I feel like a lot of the time in the marketing world, like so much is asked of marketing last second. Hey, I need this. Hey, I need this, that. I need this. Like, you need to fix. And I can't have my team always at 100% and then add things last second. So we operate at like 80% capacity, which is just like us humming along and then adding those like 5% little additions of things that we need to do second. Gets us a brave 100%.
Favorite question that we ask every guest is, a lodestar is a guiding light in the night sky. Who or what is a lodestar in your life, either personally, professionally, or both?
I'll look to the professional world right now because personally it's an easier answer. So professionally, it really is, I think guiding light is like, for me, is like the carrot. I like to just think like innovation is like such a simple word, but I think like reliable innovation is what I like to go for. I'll say that because like I don't like having vaporware out there. I never like when marketing people talk about vaporware sales because it's like I like talking about and getting creative around reliable innovation because like I know that it's actually gonna change the world and change the market. And if I know that that's gonna happen, then you can get as creative as you look around that, and then that becomes really. So that's my guiding light: is reliable innovation.
Yeah, I love that. I think adding reliable is honestly such a smart thing, because I think a lot of times they're like, this is the most innovative tech, and that tends to be the stuff that, like, yes, it is the most innovative, but also it's going to be the hardest to execute long term.
Yep, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Wes, for joining me today. If people want to find you, where can they find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or if you want to get in touch with me personally and professionally, you can also find me at Dark Matter. Anywhere you contact, all that will flow directly to me and my team anyways. But yeah, Wes Horbatuck on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Wes. And thank you guys all so much for watching. We'll see you all next week. And have a great Thursday. Cheers.
Thank you.